I think that if you tell a joke to repeated audiences and you get a good humored laugh out of that, like a genuine laugh, then that's an indication that you've actually struck the target in the right place. And the people who are complaining about that have more faith in their ideological judgment than they do in the spontaneous reaction of a multitude of people.
Yes.
Right?
But it's entirely, what I love about comedy is it's entirely subjective. And the point is that it makes somebody laugh, right? If it does make one person laugh, it is definitively funny. Just not to the masses, which is totally fine. Obviously, the objective of having a stand-up comedy career is to appeal to as many as you possibly can, but your comedic intentions is if I get a laugh, technically the joke is funny. Now it's up to me to listen and gauge the audience to where I go, do I leave it as is and I appeal to this one person, which is technically still not wrong, the joke is still funny, or do I do more work on this joke to properly articulate why I think this is funny and why you should laugh at it to try to get everybody else on board.
Okay, so when you're screening jokes for continued inclusion, you could imagine a joke that, let's like this with pieces of music. There'll be pieces of music that are very, very popular, that spread very rapidly, but that have no legs, right? They're the sort of earworm that you listen to once or twice.
TikTok
it's catchy.
Trends. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're selecting jokes, I'm wondering, what are your criteria? Can't just be that it makes the most people laugh. Like I could imagine there are jokes that have a delayed response and the faster people in the audience catch it. Like,
absolutely.
So can you tell? How do you determine which jokes you keep? Like what kind of response are you looking for?
The most amount of laughter is the best possible outcome. However, I don't know how to break this down psychologically, but there's something about comedians that like an response. He said the thing
that's
you're
an
not
edgier
supposed to say.
Yeah.
And it is funny. Not laugh out loud funny, but oh my God, he said it funny. Now there's shock value.
That's separate from shock value, though, like you're pointing out. It's like, I can't believe he had the gall to say that. That's like the jester in the king's court, fundamentally, right? Is that you've brought to light something that everyone knows or suspects and pointed to it. Right. And that is funny that you get an O response like that.
But outrage would be so personal too, because that joke about domestic violence, you saw, if you saw the joke I don't know if you saw the whole special or the clip of it, but you saw a laughter reaction, right?
Oh yeah.
Nobody
it was clearly
in that
that
audience,
people thought that was funny.
Yes, nobody in the audience had a problem whatsoever. If you watch later in the special, I do a school shooting joke that gets a massive response.
And you didn't get canceled for that.
Nobody's talking about that. People only care about the things that offend them specifically. They don't care about me hurting somebody else's feelings potentially. It's very selfish. I find it entirely selfish. You're gonna let me make fun of other things and make jokes and make light of certain other dark topics, but the thing that affects you personally is the only thing you're upset about? It's very selfish.
Yeah. You gotta ask yourself too, if the people that I saw complaining about you, I saw absolutely no evidence in the way they were talking about your joke that they actually were hurt or offended. Whatever they said was, and I've seen this about people complaining on Twitter in particular, or in public, they almost always claim offense on the behalf of hypothetical other people who somehow they're acting as allies for or spokespeople for, which is a little bit on the condescending side to begin with, if you ask me. It's like if they're offended, if a group of women against domestic abuse had conjured up a petition against you, and it was composed of 100,000 sufferers, well, that might be more evidence than some dim-witted TikToker who decided that they were going to be the spokespeople for these hypothetically offended victims. Right?
No,
all the women who feel chained up in the kitchen.
And it's also as simple as just being an easy target. Like a lot of people just want to not like me, so you give them any inkling of that, they go, boom, here's the thing I can attach myself to.
Yeah. It isn't only, I think, that they don't want to like you, it's that you blew up very relatively quickly. I mean, I know
which isn't my fault.
No.
I would have loved a progressive rise in my career. I didn't know TikTok was gonna do this.
Right. Well, but you did put in the work.
Yes.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen exactly overnight. You said you've been, you were in the trenches for what, 5 years before you had anything approximating real success? How long do you think?
Real success.
Well, I know
real
it's hard to-
success.
yeah.
I would say in stand-up, real success, probably 9 years.
9 years.
Probably
Okay,
9
okay,
years, yeah.
okay. So we can't say that you blew up like this, but it wasn't sudden.
No,
Right. It had a very long developmental curve. And
Yes,
then,
exactly.
Right. But that's typical. That's typical of success, right? It even if it doubles, say it doubles every 18 months, if it
Yeah.
starts at 0, it takes a long time for that doubling to start to actually show.
Yes.
Okay, but what that also meant was that, and this is another problem with social media, is that you had accrued a lot of status capital, right? So your status capital would be directly associated with how many people know you, essentially, and appreciate what you do. And what that means is that hangers-on can now leverage that for their own purposes. And the quickest and easiest way to do that is to complain about you publicly in a way that looks like it's compassionate. Right, because there's zero effort on behalf of the person who does that, and what they're doing then is stealing some of your accrued social capital. And what's really appalling about that, as far as I'm concerned, is that they're doing that for their own narcissistic ends, which is why they make public statements on TikTok, let's say, in the hope that they'll go viral. And then they also do that while claiming that compassion rather than narcissism is their fundamental motivation. Right.
Yeah, it's
very ugly
it's
game.
purely clout chasing at its definition. To attach yourself to what somebody else has going on for your own selfish gain is so pathetic. You don't have anything else to offer. TikTok is a massive platform of a lot of artistic creators. It's everything from people dancing to philosophers.
Right,
Like
right.
there's so much you can do on
Right,
there.
well,
and
you can do
can't any of
anything.
it without me.
Right, right,
It's
without
so funny to
stealing
me.
from you, because that's essentially what it is.
Yes, and completely lying about who you think somebody is.
Right.
You don't know who somebody is based on a joke they said.
Yeah.
Sarcasm exists for a reason. I didn't mean the thing I said. I said it because it's funny and not what I actually feel on the inside.
So who makes up the bulk of your audience in your live shows? Is it men or women?
It is women. But I would say it's massively changed over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 months. When my TikTok status really started to rise at the top of last year, it was wildly predominantly female. I would say my shows from October of last year till about March of this year were like 90% women.
Any idea why?
It's anybody's guess. You could say it's my face. You could say it's my humor. I couldn't.
What do you think? What do you think? Well, you play. I watched your crowd work. I mean, you're good at playing with the women who poke at you.
Yes,
You know,
they
and
wanted
you're
to be
good at being
roasted. That was a
provocative.
very That was a very specific trend. A lot of women hopped onto. Like a woman would heckle, would yell something out, and that's obviously annoying. So you retort with a mean response comedically.
Yeah.
And this caught on. People were really into that. Like people were coming to shows. Women were coming to shows requesting to be roasted. Now, obviously, I don't mean anything I say. I mean, shut up
Right,
and
right,
stop
right.
yelling out at shows.
Right.
But I'm articulating it in a way that, I'm just making some jokes at your expense.
Yeah.
This caught on so heavily. I think there might be, I don't know if it's a fetish or of some kind.
I don't know.
that
Maybe it's
people
because
are-
you dared to do it. I mean,
Maybe.
that's possible.
Maybe there's an appreciation
Yeah.
for
well, that's what
being
happens
bold.
with Russell Peters when he's making ethnic
Yes.
jokes.
Do you know
right?
Russell, by the way?
Do I know him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
I don't know him well, but we've spoken.
I've known him for
He was on my
years.
podcast.
He's a great guy. I've known him for
Russell's
years.
great. Great. And he's been unbelievably successful. And he dares to make ethnic
great
jokes
mentor.
to everyone. Yeah. Yeah. Is that right?
Of
That doesn't
course.
surprise me.
And that, by the way, what you just said is wildly important. If you're going to make jokes at a group's expense, you have to be open to making jokes about everybody.
Yes,
Otherwise,
yes.
it does feel targeted.
Yeah. Well, and he makes jokes about his own ethnic group more than anyone else's. And they're very pointed and targeted
Just like
jokes, too.
I make fun of myself probably more than anybody else does. That's what baffles me is when people can't
Right.
laugh at themselves.
Right.
Nothing makes me laugh harder than when someone's like making a
Yeah, well, that's
good
the
joke
best.
about me.
That's one of the
love
things I
that.
really liked about British humor. Is
Oh,
that the
it's
Brits are so good
dry.
at making fun of
I
themselves.
love it. It's the best. I went over there, I think it was June of this year, May or June. I don't know, this year feels 3 years long.